Well, Dr. Alexander van Tulleken is from Fordham University. He's Senior Fellow at the Institute of International Humanitarian Affairs. Good to have you with us, Dr. Alexander. I'm listening to that CDC press conference. It seemed they were very much at pains to say that they had everything under control. But is there cause for concern, given that there seems to be 2 days from when the patient started displaying symptoms to when he was actually hospitalised?
Very interesting, those 2 days. I don't know how they account for them, because really if you have someone with suspected Ebola from the region, it would to admit them and isolate them then, but we don't know the full story, and I'm sure we'll find out more. Is it cause for concern? Well, if you've been directly exposed to that patient since he was symptomatic, then it's possible that you've caught Ebola, but it seems to me unlikely. You'd have to have very close contact with bodily fluids, blood, vomit, saliva, things like that. So I would say there is not cause for concern for the vast majority of people in the region, and certainly not for the vast majority of people in the US.
And one of the things they were at pains to say is that this disease is not contagious as long as there are no symptoms. So in other words, if a patient doesn't have a fever, he can't pass the virus on.
So that's right, and I think the reason they're saying that is because there'll be, a few hundred people who are on the plane with him saying, well, I could have been on the plane with someone with Ebola, and the answer is that they've screened people for symptoms before they get on the plane, screen them for temperatures, and so that does mean that the odds of someone being infectious, that you could catch the disease on a plane, are extremely low. And I have to say, the thing that's very concerning about this patient, of course, we want this man to survive, and I think he'll be getting excellent care in Texas. I think they'll be more than competent to manage this disease as best they can and to prevent it spreading. The thing that should also concern us is how very much this makes the point that this epidemic is out of control in West Africa. And the most important response to this is not panic at home, it's not closing airports. The most important response is to scale up our work in West Africa.
But the point is that, I mean, this virus has a 21-day incubation period. So if you're screening patients for fevers, it's quite possible that people are getting on planes, not displaying symptoms, but still carrying Ebola.
That's absolutely right, and I think the nature of Ebola is that it is actually not a terribly contagious disease. Famously, the head of the London School of Tropical Medicine, Peter Piot, the man that discovered it, he would confidently sit next to someone on a train with Ebola. It's that hard to catch. So it is perfectly possible that someone can get on a plane to any city in the world with Ebola, not contagious on the plane, but be contagious afterwards and pass the disease along. The difference is that in America, it's very easy to contain this disease. We can contact trace people very effectively. People have got cell phones, people are educated, you put out public service announcement. There are all kinds of things that are different to West Africa. And so isolating, containing any spread of this disease in the US, it's going to be a bit complicated, it's going to be a lot of work, but it isn't cause for panic. There isn't going to be an epidemic in the US. But this should really, really make us think about West Africa.
Well, of course, I mean, the US military are already in West Africa, aren't they, trying to stop the spread of Ebola. Do you think enough is being done to try and stop this disease at source?
I think we've acted far too late. If the US had done what they're doing now, even a couple of months ago, I think things would look very different. The striking thing sitting here in the US is that the American government are the government that have stepped up. And in fact, almost every other government have committed token amounts of resources. I would suggest that this will be one of the defining humanitarian crises of our time. I mean, this is plunging a region into instability and chaos. This isn't about the few thousand people who've died, which represent a severe enough humanitarian crisis on their own. This is about potentially the collapse of governments, the collapse of countries, and the collapse of a region. And that's bad for everybody. And so what I would say is the US are the competent organization to lead this in terms of expertise, in terms of manpower and logistics. But we definitely need large commitments from other countries, and they need to be working not just with their military, but with civil society, with international organizations as well. At the moment, the entire Ebola response has really been run through one private organization, and that's Doctors Without Borders. They've done a heroic job. They need more resources, but for sure, you cannot have a global response from one NGO.
Some really excellent points there. Thank you very much indeed for that. Alexander van Tulleken speaking to us.